Okay, welcome back everyone. It's July 13 of 2015. We're going to wrap up our discussion of the Foundation of Ethics by Brentano. And he closes out this volume by discussing the positing of the supreme good. And so it's a very careful and analytical look at positing itself. And it's probably a great discussion of positing that helps us to really understand how we actualize and objectify the teleosis of inscribing our lexical content. How does that become objectively real and objectively actual? And as we've discovered in his most recent closing lectures, he gives us a triad within the triad. And I love these because they're just great summary pieces. And we have a triad within the triad again. If you look at the first moment, we have the triad of positing as an intro to the overall lecture. The in itself of positing, or our construction, we posit what is believed to be within our realm of influence. We do have an anticipatory expectation of its actualization, and this construction occurs after our existential affirmation work and our analytical knowing work. We form that model of insight as a probability, but we posit this model of insight with an esoteric content of probability, but we couple it with an apodictic motivational base of certainty. Motivation is always certainty for Brentano. It's emotional, but our emotional motivational base is generally something that we carry with ethical certainty. That's why it's our motivational base. It's acquired and internalized as a certainty for us as the highest good. So the motivational base that couples our probability of content is a motivational base of certainty. We confront differences of interest in our external reality and history. We have to determine the best or the most appropriate area where the new is on the verge of emerging, where the good is making itself visible and needs our assistance. So we go to that second moment of going out of ourselves into historical reality, and we discern our sphere of influence within this place where the good is emerging. We evaluate the immediate and long-range consequences of positing our model. We recollect any past analogous experience we can draw from, and then we form and posit that esoteric model of probability, a probability of certainty, not certainty in itself, but a probability of certainty that is coupled with a motivational certainty, of course, but the content of the model is a probability. The third moment of positing is return, that return of knowing that helps us to form our ethical base. It helps us to refine and revise that motivational base of certainty that informs all of our analytical work at the existential and the analytic level. So this return is extremely important for ethics for Brentano. We form an interpretive workspace for the return of knowing. We want to refine what is best. We want to refine the better within our existential sphere of power. So it becomes the refined knowing that shapes reflexive understanding, which will inform and shape our concept of the moral right, which is nested where? Primarily in our motivational base of attestation. So the return of knowing is very important for informing our motivational base, revising our motivational base, which will in turn inform existential judgment, analytical judgment. It will enter into our epistemology. And of course, from Brentano, epistemology is reciprocally related with ethics. You can't discuss the one without discussing the other. So we have a triad within a triad. We have a great introductory summary, a kind of a pictograph to get us launched. The second moment is the realm of historical reality when we go out of ourselves and positing that model of insight, that model of probability for the good. So the external reality is the living world of the present and the future. It's the future, of course, because we're positing a teleosis. Our task is to further the good, the ethical nobility of Greek beauty. Our teleosis seeks to realize the greatest possible spiritual good by loving it, furthering it, and serving it. And then we discussed the objective good in the last lesson. Our key focus is to reach full objectivity, full objective good for our posited teleosis. That is our key focus, the objectively actual, the objectively real. The generic concept, which is going to be the generic concept for the motivational base, is going to be for Brentano as a Catholic theologian. It's going to be the Christian foundational generic concept of love of God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That is the generic enclosure for Brentano's motivational base, period. As a Catholic theologian, that is his motivational base. And it is a motivational base of certainty which informs his model of probability. That leads us to actualization for Brentano, and he wants to get specific when he gets to actualization. Because if this motivational base truly does speak to loving the neighbor as a self, what can that mean when we couple that with the idea of the ethical noble, the Greek beauty? At the individual level, it means on the physical level to supply life, health, and strength. On the spiritual level, primarily to teach others how to see, how to observe spirit in reality. Help others to perceive the secondary objects. That's not something that is normally done. People don't normally perceive spirit. So part of what we do is teaching. Part of what we get involved is teaching others to see spirit, to see the realm of spiritual presentation, the presentation of secondary objects that can be confronted by individual perceiving experience. That has to be taught. Spirit is taught. So that's something we strive for on the spiritual level, is the gift of observing spirit, and then the gift of teaching the cognitive, aesthetic, and moral virtue. We want to help the individuals to realize the possession of their essentials that they need, and then we want to further and enhance social relation. So the key for Brentano is to teach the secondary realm of spirit, to help others to perceive secondary objects, the spiritual dimension that is the secondary dimension of presentation. Now on the social level, we take up trying to promote a justice that accounts for differences between people. We want to enhance order and security. We want to refine and revise a good legal code. We want to protect citizens from exploitation. We want to preserve a peace, which is a healing of fragmentation. We want to heal the fragmentation of the internal life, the national life, and the religious life. We want to heal fragmentation in all three of those areas. We also want to promote and to heal cooperation between classes. So Brentano, in his conclusive lecture, gives us a great look at positing, and he also gives us a triad within a triad. And that's the beauty, really, of the latter portion of this volume. The last 100 pages really gave us lectures that presented triads within triads and little mini summaries that became the most important aspect of the book, I believe. But here we get a great mini triad of positing itself, and the importance of that return of knowing to help us shape our ethical base. And that's the key for Brentano, is that return of knowing, which helps us to reform, to revise our motivational base of attestation. And the motivational base is an emotive certainty that informs our model of probability. That will wrap up our volume on the foundation of ethics for Brentano.